Yeah, certainly in England, we're the first regulated law firm that is authorised and regulated to provide services via AI. One thing about being a lawyer, and you know this as well, Charlene, you become very cautious. And the longer you are a lawyer, the more careful you become. That's the way we think. It's the way we're trained. It's the way we think.
Was the AI decision made to become more attractive to claimants who perhaps can't afford the traditional law firm route?
A question I get asked a lot is, does AI mean there's going to be a lot lower need for lawyers?
When a claimant goes to Garfield, can he expect to be receiving legal advice? Do you think there is scope in the future to ever have an AI full-service law firm? Is that where we're heading? What is the one thing you would really love everyone to know about Garfield that is currently misunderstood? Today on the podcast, I am joined by Philip Young, former city litigator and co-founder of Garfield, the very first law firm in history to be authorized and regulated by the SRA to provide legal services solely through AI. Spotting an opportunity to use AI to simplify legal processes, Philip teamed up with a former quantum physicist to build Garfield. Their mission? To give businesses the confidence and tools to resolve disputes quickly, fairly, and without unnecessary cost. So if you're curious about how the very first AI law firm has been built and exactly what the future holds for AI and the law, make sure to sit down and listen or watch this episode with Philip Young. This episode is brought to you by our very first show sponsor, Capturebee.io. One of the hardest parts of building a business and expanding your personal brand is keeping a steady flow of warm leads and connections. When I first started, chasing leads on LinkedIn was draining, distracting, and let's be honest, not really why I went into business in the first place. Now, just imagine never having to hunt for clients again. No cold outreach, no endless LinkedIn scrolling at 1 a.m., no awkward reels either. That's exactly what Capturebee does for you. It's a done-for-you outreach service that books warm leads straight into your calendar. And more than that, it can help you get featured on leading podcasts so that you can elevate your personal brand at the same time. Well, I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me, yes.
You go with Philip or Phil? Which one do you prefer?
The only person who calls me Phil is my mum.
Okay, so we're going to stay...
You can say Philip. You could do it if you want, I don't care. It's no one seems to do it.
Let's avoid any Freudian slip if I call you like your mum does.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. It will be Philip then.
Okay.
Excellent. Great. Philip, I really want to ask you first, what is your current mission and what is your source of motivation?
So our mission is access to justice. What we are trying to do, my team and I, is build something that can help ordinary people who otherwise would struggle to be able to use the court service. And where we started is with small debt claims. And I've mentioned this elsewhere, but it's always worth saying again. The background to Garfield, the AI product that Dan and I and our team have built, is basically inspiration from my brother-in-law. So he's a guy called Andy. He's a lovely bloke, lives up in Sheffield, and he's a plumber. And he's, like a lot of sole traders, his problem is that sometimes people just don't pay his debts. And that's a big problem for him because the sorts of money that he is owed when that happens, and it is occasional, but it is a problem when it happens. They're relatively small by the standards of, say, a city lawyer, but for somebody like Andy, they're a summer holiday or a winter holiday. So they're very material for him. And people like that don't really have the time to pursue legal process, and they find it scary, and they can't afford lawyers because lawyers at that level are uneconomic. So I thought to myself, I would help him over the years, as that's what good brothers-in-law do, to get himself paid. But two and a half years ago, I thought that AI technology would be ideal to solve that first. And so that's where we started.
And what prompted you specifically to go into the AI field? I'm really curious.
Okay, so I'm a big nerd. That's the truth of it. So I'm a sort of. I was saying on Tuesday at a conference I spoke at. I was saying I'm a nerd twice over because I'm a legal nerd, because I've always found the law really interesting, philosophically and conceptually, as well as a matter of practice. And I also find tech really interesting, and I've always been a techie. So I'm sort of nerd squared because I'm a nerd twice over.
Love
I'm
it.
sort of nerd multiplied. So that's and the reason I started Garfield when I did was that I'd retired from the law firm that I co-founded after 13 years there, because after COVID I wanted to take a break and do something else. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just thought, first of all, I'd take a break. And then it just so happened that the AI revolution began at that point when I didn't have much to do. And I'd already repainted the whole of my house. Like a lot of lawyers, you do one thing, you do another, and then you're like, what do I do next? And then this happened. And I thought, well, we could build something. So I started building something.
So not the classic retirement plan of playing golf and going on a world cruise. Not quite.
Not quite that. No.
Not quite that.
So I'm probably the worst lawyer on the planet at golf. So when I was a young lawyer in the 90s, everyone played golf. And I know how in theory to play golf, but I've never played golf. I sort of remember is it Oscar Wilde who described it as a good walk ruined? I think it's not my sport. Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
And
do you play golf?
I do not. I have spent quite a bit of time on golf courses just to keep companies, but no, I can't say that it's a talent of mine, unfortunately. I would love to. Maybe something that I pick up later on in years.
That might be your retirement, one of your
perhaps,
retirement things.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you. I mean, I've been to a lot of golf clubs as sort of marketing things when I was in practice, but never actually played. It was just sort of chatting.
Right.
I probably would have enjoyed playing more than chatting. Yeah.
It seems to be the place where a lot of business is done.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. You are officially the first SRA-regulated AI law firm. Is that correct? As
far as we know, yeah, certainly in England, we're the first regulated law firm that is authorised and regulated to provide services via AI. And we, as far as we know, we're the first anywhere in the world. And that seems to have been borne out by the sort of the global reaction from the global legal community. But we're not alone anymore. There's something that looks a bit like a regulated law firm in Arizona now, that was set up in the last couple of weeks that apparently provides legal services by AI, called UDIA. Probably mispronouncing that. But so I think there's more coming. The interesting thing there is I don't think it's any coincidence at all that the two jurisdictions that have innovated this first both allow ABSs as capital structures. And I think that's really important. I think we are more likely to see AI law firms come out of jurisdictions that allow that than jurisdictions that are very rigid about how law firms can be set up and how the partner capital structure works.
Talking about setup, I have some questions. Perhaps some of them are obvious, but when I first read your article on the FT about an AI law firm, I thought, I have so many questions, and I'm sure many people have them too. Do you have a physical office? I'm guessing not, right? AI means everything online. Does that mean you have a team somewhere in the world? Is there anyone human other than you and your co-founder?
I'm not.
Right?
Don't worry, I'm not a very sophisticated AI. If anyone had built me as an AI, they'd have done a bad job. They could have done a much better job. No, there is a team. So the two of us who are founders are Dan and myself. And Dan, his background is he's a quantum physicist, and I sort of extracted him from his PhD in photonics to do this.
As you do.
As you do, yes. People always say, how did you meet a quantum physicist? I just say lawyers and quad physicists, we hang out together all the time. It's just,
always.
That's
my
chill.
crowd at the club,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Don't like to tell people that lawyers just tend to mingle with other lawyers because that sounds boring.
And we're not boring.
And we're not boring. No, we're terribly interesting lawyers. We're fascinating people. That's why a TV program's always made about us. So there's Dan and I. We've got a wider team of developers, James, Pablo, Harry, Victory, and also Hugo, who's our junior legal engineer. He's a key member of the team as well. And everyone apart from me is young, and I am the old person, which is ironic given my surname. And what else? We have an office because you have to have a registered office, but it's not an office. I've always wanted with this to try and do things in a new way and innovate as much as possible. And all the guys didn't really want to come and sit in an office all day long. So we're a remote team, and everything we built remotely. And I think When I started in law, if you'd said to partners in the 90s or the noughties, oh, you could have a law firm and it could not have an office, they would have looked at you as though you're mad.
Of
But of
course.
course, nowadays, post-COVID, we've discovered it's perfectly possible. And if anything, COVID taught me it was possible, because pre-COVID, I would have found it difficult to believe you can effectively work remotely. But I think in many ways, you can, particularly what we're doing, you can work a lot more effectively remotely than you could do by making everyone come into an office.
I really want to understand the client's journey. So let's say I'm a claimant, right? Because my understanding is you represent claimants,
Claimants
not
only,
defendants,
yes.
right? So I'm a claimant. I have a small claim. What's my experience? Do I ever interact with a human? Do I go onto your website, fill in a form that is triaged by AI? How do I get onboarded to the firm? Do I have any kind of welcome greetings or human behind? Is there a team that I can contact, or is my case and my file, my client matter totally allocated to an AI? I'm really curious.
Okay, so let me describe the journey, Charlene. So from the first thing someone would do is that they drop onto our website and hopefully read our website, because we put some time into it and hope it's informative. But they don't have to, of course. They can just click on sign up. If they click on sign up, they go into our onboarding flow. And this is also on the web. This is a digital form of the way that a client would sign up with a law firm. So it gets basic details, who they are, where they are. It obtains all of the KYC and AML information that any law firm requires from their client. And it's all totally digitized. So in the old days, this would all be done manually, and somebody would turn up in your office and have their passport and their proof of address. You don't need that anymore. You can just bring the information in digitally. And we're also connected to a very well-known AML KYC checking bit of software that a lot of other law firms use, that is a sort of final step that also verifies that they're a real human being and they're not an AI avatar and things of that nature. It then comes to us to decide whether we're going to permit that company or person onto our platform, because we won't allow everyone on. I personally want to be satisfied that they are someone who genuinely has a small debt claim and not either a tourist or a bad actor, because we have a duty as a law firm to make sure that only legitimate claims go in potentially to the court system, because that's where they could end up. So assuming I am satisfied, and I haven't been satisfied about all of the applicants, and I've only let people on that I'm comfortable are a genuine user of the platform, then they go into the product itself. They're met by a sort of cheery, happy greeting that says good morning or good afternoon, and then they start the process of a claim. And essentially at the first stage, they need to give us the invoices that are unpaid. And they can do that in a number of ways. So they could just drag and drop them. So we've tried to make this as convenient and easy as possible. So you just simply drag and drop the documents onto the website and it uploads them. Or if they have one of the 4 big accounting packages in this country, so Xero, Sage, QuickBooks and FreshAgent, they can pull the data in programmatically from those. They can just connect to their own accounts platform and suck the data in. So very convenient for them. If they have a written contract, we ask for that as well, but it's not mandatory. It's just if they give us a contract, we can get more information that will make their journey even easier. So we can, for example, check if there's a provision in the contract that gives an entitlement to interest. And then we would then calculate interest in accordance with the contract rather than in accordance with either the 2 statutes that otherwise may apply. But anyway, once you've given the platform the invoices and the contract, Garfield reads all of that, it triages the case, and it asks itself, is this a small debt claim or something else? Is the defendant in England and Wales? Because we don't do service out of the jurisdiction, so we need debtors that are in England and Wales. And that's because that's a limitation in the court's API, that's not a limitation in our system. And we also check for things like limitation. And if there's a limitation issue, then Garfield will start to try and help the user see if they can get past it. Assuming that it is a valid small debt claim and it's met all of the qualifying requirements, Garfield then says what it understands from all the documents. So it tells the user what it's understood. And that's like a good lawyer would do with a client to make sure there's no misunderstanding. And Garfield gives the user options. So would you like me to draft a polite chaser? Would you like me to draft a more formal letter for action? The user then chooses which option. Garfield goes off and asks itself, what information do I have that I need for this document? Do I need any more information? If it needs more information, it asks for it. If not, it just goes ahead and drafts a document and presents it for the user to review. And that's really important. At each stage in the journey, the user's in control. It's not like a sort of system where you press one button and off this thing goes and does everything automatically. The user stays in control and decides at each stage what to do and what to send out the door. The user can review the letter for action or the chaser. It can change some of the details if the user wants. It can choose which bank account it would like to tell the debtor to pay, because no money goes through our hands. We expect debtors to pay creditors directly. I think our users are very keen on that, and also it's good for us as well because it avoids the need for things like a client bank account. And if the user's happy with the letter, the user approves it, pays for it, and then it will come to me and I will check the document. And if I'm happy, I'll approve it. If not, I will edit it and it'll go back again to the user. But if I'm happy with it, out it goes. And Garfield sends documents by email and by hard copy post. Users can choose not to do that. They could choose just to download the document, send it themselves, but most users prefer the convenience of us sending it. And users can also white label, so they can choose to put letters on their paper as well,
Right.
Which is really helpful, particularly for the law firms who are users of ours. Some of them put their letters on Garfield paper and some of them put them on their own, and that makes perfect sense. And then without sort of going through each stage in turn, the same process happens if the case doesn't settle and you go through the court process. You know, the court, that Garfield generates the court documents for you, presents them to the user for review. If the user's comfortable, they pay and approve them, then they come to me, and if I'm comfortable, I pay and approve them, they go to court, court serves them, and then so on and so forth until the user gets paid or there's a judgment.
And the part of the sequence that really caught my attention here is when you said, I review it,
Yes.
and off it goes.
Yes.
So there is a human, trained, qualified lawyer somewhere in the loop. That's really the piece that I wanted to hear more about. Was that a condition for you to become SRA regulated, to have effectively a trained, qualified litigator that actually approves any document before it goes off, right?
Yeah, I don't think it was a condition. I don't think the SRA sort of imposed it as a condition, but it was what we said to the SRA we were going to do. Because I think one thing about being a lawyer, and you know this as well, Charlene, you become very cautious. And the longer you are a lawyer, the more careful you become. Because I think that's the way we think. It's the way we're trained. It's the way we think. It becomes innate in you. I think it's ingrained. And I'm very conscious that there's a lot of responsibility resting on this product to work properly. And I think responsibility and accountability are the two key rules, two key words when talking about AI, particularly in the legal space. So I wanted to make sure that at least at the beginning, before a letter goes out the door or a document's gone out the door to the court, I'd looked it over. Over time, we've agreed in principle with the SRA that it won't be necessary for me to look at every single document. And the reason for that is that you can mathematically confidence score documents. So if you have a large enough data set, a statistically relevant data set, you can begin to build digital tools that will look at a document and say, I am 99% confident that document is correct. I'm 100% confident. And you can then set a threshold. You could say, if you go under, say, 98% confident, a lawyer looks at it. If you're above that, it's fine. Now, there will be some other issues that are involved in this, and sorry to become a bit of a lawyer here, but...
oh, please.
Yeah, we are both lawyers. But there's obviously also duties owed to the court, and if you sign a statement of truth, then I really do think you should read the document. And so there will be questions then about what can be and what can't be automated. It may well be that there are some steps in the court process that cannot be fully automated, and that's probably a good thing. We'll have to see. And there's a live debate beginning with all relevant stakeholders at the moment. So the senior judiciary, HMCTS, MOJ, everyone is talking about the human in the loop and where it's necessary and where it's not. And that's going to be, I think, driven by the work of the OPRC, the Online Procedural Rules Committee, because they are going to evolve rules for the 21st century, and they will need to grapple with this as a topic. So it's at the moment I'm checking everything. As time rolls on, the checking may reduce, but in a sort of measured and evidence-driven way, because again, ultimately I'm accountable for this product, and I want to make sure that it does the right thing by people and doesn't cause any difficulties.
Do you have more than one lawyer?
So there's me, and there is in the core team, there's myself, and we've got a a legal engineer. And in the wider team, there are other solicitors, a barrister, and some other lawyers. But at the moment, I am the sole lawyer. We might, as we scale, have to have more, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
The reason I was curious to ask you that, and I completely understand how this law firm really came out of a dream to merge law and technology, I wonder, was there also an intention to be cost efficient? Or was the AI decision made to become more attractive to claimants who perhaps can't afford the traditional law firm route?
Yeah, exactly so. Yeah, no, Charlie, I mean, the benefit I think AI technology gives is it takes away or at least mitigates the costs of a human-led process where the cost is significant, but the actual value delivered is quite low. It flips it around. So AI can do things that are repetitive, administrative, tend to be document heavy, and don't ultimately deliver an awful lot of value to the end client or end user. And I think that's a promise that it gives. And in order to deliver that, you have to reduce the numbers of humans in the process and replace them to an extent with AI. However, it has second order effects. So a question I get asked a lot is, does AI mean there's going to be a lot smaller, lot lower lead for lawyers? And I think the answer to that is no. I think counterintuitively it's going to lead to more lawyers, and we can come on and talk about that maybe if you want to talk about that. But it also has other weird second order effects. So one thing that we've discovered is a lot of our early users have gone and collected a lot of debts that they didn't expect to collect. So these were basically figures in their age debtors report that they had given up on. And obviously you can imagine they're delighted, and they're saying we're going to use this extra revenue to expand our business to employ more people. So the unexpected second order effect of Garfield seems to be that we're creating more jobs, which is just awesome, which is something that is just, it's very satisfying as someone who's sort of spent the last 2.5 years doing this. Actually, it's helping people. What's
your vision for the future?
Me personally, Garfield, or the world at large? That's such a big question, you see, Charlie. Nice big open question you asked there. Yeah.
Let's start with Garfield.
Well, yes, Garfield. Well, at least that's nice and confined. So Garfield, I would like to sort of finish off building the debt product. And I've also said publicly that judgment enforcement is a big problem. And we could build a module onto Garfield that would solve that as well. Mm-hmm. And that's a logical thing to build. So if you can build a project that gets you to judgment, you might as well have a product that then turns a judgment into cash if it's not paid voluntarily. Where we'll go thereafter will depend, I think, a bit upon where the demand is and also where the need is. So we built it in a modular way. And what I would love to be able to do is I'd love to be able to find, and I'm speaking not just myself here, but the whole team, find areas of unmet legal need where there are people who are vulnerable. And we can then deploy Garfield technology to build a solution for them that is cost effective for them. What I'm not yet sure about is what those areas will be, but I think we will find them when we get to that point.
When a claimant goes to Garfield, can he expect to be receiving legal advice? I understand it's a very procedural, step-by-step, this is what to do, this is the paperwork that we need to send next. Is that legal advice?
Oh, what is legal advice? Yes, no, that's a really good question. And there's been plenty of cases trying to work out what is and what is not legal advice. In fact, what is and what is not advice. Certainly in the banking law field, there's plenty of judgments about whether or not what bankers said was advice or just a recommendation or just information.
If you're enjoying this show so far, I just have a very quick favor to ask you. Could you go ahead and click the follow button or the subscribe button? It would mean so much to me, and it would really help to grow our show so that we can enhance the production, we can bring you the best possible guests, and we can have the most amazing conversations. So if you haven't already done this, please take a moment today to go ahead and click the follow button or the subscribe button. Thank you so much. And now let's go back to this amazing conversation.
Right.
And I don't think English law has quite sort of reached a definitive view on this. So it's quite an interesting philosophical discussion. But certainly from my perspective, Garfield does some things that are legal advice. So Garfield gives recommendations on procedure. And I personally would regard that as legal advice. So saying you could do this or you could do that, or you need to fill in this form and send it to court. I think that is legal advice. You could argue it's information, but I would call it legal advice. What Garfield doesn't do is it doesn't offer what I call merits advice. So were you to ask Garfield to tell you, am I going to win or lose? Or the classic question that all litigators always get asked, which is, what percentage would you put on this case? Which is a topic I've written articles about. I have particular bugbears about that. But Garfield won't do that. We've deliberately banned Garfield politely says, I'm very sorry, I can't tell you that. And that's really for reasons of lawyerly caution. So, and it's very clear to the user, it's in the terms and conditions, it's explained to them that this is not something that Garfield does. If they want that, they should go to a more traditional law firm. But it's because at this early stage, we don't have a data set big enough yet to check whether or not what Garfield would say is its view is within the range of reasonable answers a reasonably competent lawyer would give. And I think we need to get to that data set before we allow that. As it happens, we've been testing Garfield on huge numbers of dummy claims now for 2.5 years. On the dummy claims, we do test this, and actually Garfield is, I think, very accurate. But I just don't want to allow that yet. And I think the SRA also thought that was a very prudent approach. It's important to say in this respect that small debt claims are, by their nature, relatively straightforward. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on a small claims track. And they tend to be very fact heavy, or they're not many facts because they're small claims, and not much law. So actually the challenge of asking an AI system to give a good view on the future is not as complicated as it would be than, for example, my previous world when I was a commercial court practitioner, where I think if you asked an AI to give a view on a very complicated bit of commercial litigation, you might get all sorts of crazy answers. So the scope is easier, but at the moment, no.
And is that also the reason why you choose to specialize in that particular niche and that particular scope of doing small
debt claims? Yeah. So I think it all just came together, Charlene, in a really nice way. So I wanted to help my brother-in-law out. And small debt claims then just seemed like a thing you could use AI to help someone out with. So my co-founder, Dan, he uses all these great scientific phrases that I sort of trying to adopt because they're much cooler than talking legal phrases. And he talks about small debt claims as a series of relatively confined semi-open problem spaces, which I just think is brilliant. I keep going around now thinking, is that a semi-open problem space or is that a closed problem space? But what he means by that is that the scope of the challenge in terms of the complexity is not infinite. It's finite, and it's not big finite. It's on the smaller side of finite, and because of that, he's always said, and I've always agreed that AI is an ideal. This is an ideal test case for AI. It also helps that all the inputs in each stage are relatively defined and all the outputs are relatively defined. So when I started this, a very eminent Silk, who's been a friend of mine for a very long time, he said to me, but Philip, he said, the range of possible defences to a debt claim is infinite. And I said, I won't say the name of the Silk. I don't want to embarrass him. I said, that can't be, we'll call him Jeff. That's not his real name. I said, Jeff, that can't possibly be true because there isn't an infinitely long law library. There isn't infinitely long contract law books. And when you go to look at Chitty, it's a finite book, and other contract books are finite books. And so I said, you can actually conceptually sit down and categorize all the defences that are available in English law to a debt claim. And of course, if you can do that, then you can generate a schema that says this is a legal framework. These are the possible buckets into which defences can fall, and then you can start to build something around that.
Do you think there is scope in the future to ever have an AI full service law firm? Is that where we're heading?
Only in science fiction films. Yeah, I mean, if you'd asked me, the problem with all this is that the technology is moved so fast, and also it moves in discontinuous jumps. So it's not like a linear progress. It's sort of like that, and then whoop, and then like that. And,
right.
And it's the bits that you can't predict in the future. And there was that 2.5 years ago, and there's been a bit of a linear increase since, and there'll probably be another jump at some point. But on the scale, on looking at current current state of the art in LLMs and what we can do, I personally, and I was saying this actually on Tuesday in a conference, I don't think you could reliably build a product that could do, for example, intermediate track debt claims, far less multi-track debt claims. And debt claims are some of the easier types of civil claims. Now imagine some incredibly complicated bit of commercial litigation. There'd be no way of building a product that could do all that. You could build something that would augment lawyers doing it, and I've thought about how you could do that. But at the moment, you couldn't build something that did the whole thing. Now, who knows? Maybe in 3 years we have another chat, Charlene, and suddenly the world has changed and none of us are doing anything because AI is doing absolutely everything. But I think that's unlikely.
And you become the first world full-service AI law firm.
I don't know if that's actually my ambition. I don't think I want to do that almost. Yeah, I think someone else do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Good to know. Yeah. I have a question, maybe a bit of a provocative question, but I'm sure it's one
go for it. Yeah, you can't.
Others have asked you.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm a claimant,
yes.
and I go on your website because I just listen to this podcast and I'm curious.
Yes.
And I do have a claim and I want to recover money. I see the price on your website and I think it's very reasonable and very attracted, but there is a part of me that thinks, well, it's AI. Why can't I use Claude? Why can't I use ChatGPT and get AI, my own AI, cheap subscription to do what potentially this law firm would do? I know this is controversial, but could you tell us what would be the different experience and why would I want to go to you as opposed to going to Claude or going to ChatGPT?
Yeah, it's a good question. And friends of mine who are in the judiciary say that they are seeing an increasing amount of stuff that's clearly been generated by ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude, and they're not too happy about it.
Well, I can imagine
AI,
why.
they call it AI slop on the whole. I think the difference is that Garfield is a sort of end-to-end solution. So it's been architected. If you can use that as a verb, I probably shouldn't use that word as a verb.
It makes sense, though.
I know. The tech guys do it, and I'm now finding I'm doing it, but
I love it.
The grammar pedant in me hates it, so I don't just go out and shoot myself later. But yeah,
sounding very Silicon Valley-esque.
I know exactly. Yeah, and I'm not a tech bro at all.
Oh, really?
No, God, no. I'm a lawyer. First and foremost.
Where's the three-piece suit, though, Philip? You know, you're heading towards tech bro.
I felt as I was coming to see you, I couldn't look like I was stuffy. I had to look like relatively human. Anyway, where was I? Yeah. So the first thing you don't have is you don't, if you're not a lawyer, you might ask a question, but if you don't ask the exactly the right question, you won't necessarily get back exactly the right answer. And that's one of the challenges about using an LLM. It's sort of, you can get a risk of garbage in, garbage out. And the second thing is, you're not in a position to assess the accuracy of your answer unless you happen to be a lawyer. So you might be told something that looks superficially plausible, but actually is just wholly wrong. And that's, I think, fundamentally the reason that the regulatory bodies are very keen to create a sort of a really vibrant ecosystem of regulated products to give consumers and businesses a good alternative at a reasonable price. But the other thing is that ChatGPT can generate sort of text, but it can't do everything else Garfield does. So, for example, Garfield's hooked up to the court system, so it doesn't just generate the forms and populate them. So if you're using ChatGPT, you could say, oh, what do I do next? You generate a claim form. You'd have to go off and find a claim form. You'd have to download it. You'd have to go through it and try and fill it in. You'd have to ask lots and lots and lots. You'd have to ask lots and lots of little questions about each section. Garfield does all that instantly for you within moments. So it's way, way quicker. But Garfield also submits it to the court for you, which obviously ChatGPT cannot do, and also deals with the court as you might get a response, whether it's, I don't know, an admission or defence, or maybe no response, and then you apply for default judgment. The other thing Garfield does is it talks to a lot of other services. So if your debtor is a company, at a very early stage, Garfield goes to company's house and checks on the status of the corporate debtor to see if it's trading. If it's insolvent or it's in administration, Garfield will warn you about that. And if it's filed financial statements at company's house, Garfield pulls them for you and displays them and gives you a view on the solvency of the debtor. So those sort of extra things, ChatGPT wouldn't do automatically for you, certainly wouldn't do it for you really quickly. You could obviously if you knew what you were doing, you could go to company's house, you could search, you could find the company, you could then download the financial statements, you could then feed them into Claude or ChatGPT, but that would take you time that Garfield's just done in seconds. So that's the reason why really you get comfort from the fact it's regulated and that there's a lawyer who's helped build it, and therefore it works correctly. It will be quicker and it won't cost a lot of money. Actually, if you look at the way we've built the pricing structure, it's super reasonable.
I had a look at your website, of course. And in the
marks out of 10. By the way, Pablo built it, so you have to say nice figure, because otherwise Pablo would be sad.
I really loved how user-friendly it was. And I particularly appreciated the sort of Q&A part where a lot of the questions that I had for you, I could actually read the answer. And I thought, oh, that's really useful, because putting myself in the shoes of a claimant, those will be my burning questions. And those will be questions that I would need to feel some kind of reassurance before I enter your world. And one question in particular, which was one of my questions, so I really appreciated the fact that you preempted that on the website, was what about hallucinations?
Hallucinations,
Because it's very common. We all know that ChatGPTs and Claude and any other AI does love hallucinating every now and again. My understanding is that you have put some proprietary measures against hallucination. Can you tell us more? Of course, I appreciate there is an element of proprietary confidentiality, and
that's fine.
Certainly wouldn't want you to get in trouble with your co-founder.
If I say too much, Dan doesn't know where I live, so he'll come and get me. So I'll be careful. Don't worry, Charlie.
So I'm not trying to pry into any confidential proprietary, but is there anything you could tell us so that we understand how you safeguard against those hallucinations?
100%. So from the very beginning of Garfield, I've been really conscious of this as a big issue that is inherent in an LLM because of its probabilistic nature. And even 2.5 years ago, it was pretty obvious that there would be a risk of people using consumer-grade LLMs in a sort of over-ambitious way and then generate material that they confidently put before the court that is just either factually wrong or worse, is just misleads a court on the law. And lo and behold, every week there's a new case somewhere in the world where some poor lawyer, well, not say poor, it's their mistake, has put something in front of the court that they're now in big trouble about. I did have some sympathy actually for the first few lawyers because there hadn't been any cases and they weren't really aware of the risks. But now unfortunately, the sympathy sort of come to an end, I think, in a way, and from the courts as well. So yes, we've been mindful of this from the very beginning, and we built the architecture of the product around it. Look, I didn't use the word architected. I protected myself that time. Thank God.
I was on the
Oh God, he's going to do it. No.
I was hoping you.
Yeah. No. I'm trying to up my grammar game here. So yeah, first of all, the architecture. So Garfield is not just a bunch of LLM calls and other cool stuff. It's much more complicated than that. So it's a hybrid system. So we have a deterministic expert system and also a probabilistic LLM system, and we've brought them together. And the expert system is in control. The expert system is the boss. And you can think of the expert system as a sort of synthesis of legal knowledge and my knowledge and experience and sort of law. One of my tech guys called it law stuff, which I felt didn't give it the credit it deserved. But it therefore constrains what the LLM can do and what it can ask for and how it can work. And that massively mitigates the risk of hallucinations. The next thing that we've done is that we've been very careful what we use LLMs for, the probabilistic side. And in the main, we use it for inference. What we don't use it for is anything that smacks of factual generation, because that's where you run into big risks of hallucination, and anything that is case law or statute based. So the LLMs are just not allowed, when we make LLM calls, they're just not allowed to propose law. We rely upon the expert system for the law. And so that's the first side of things, the architecture. And there's one other thing as well that I'm really excited by, and it's we've been building it for the last 6 months. We have within Garfield, not just Garfield, but we have other AI tools that monitor Garfield. So it's AI watching AI. So it's not just human oversight. We also have an awful lot of electronic oversight. And one of our tools is an AI that watches in real time, second by second, the operation of Garfield. and flags to us instantly if something has happened that it's not satisfied with, which means that if we needed to, we could drop right into a dialogue between a user and Garfield and just correct something. The other way, and I think of it a bit like a partner in a law firm overseeing the associate, except this is a friendly partner who's on all the time, 24/7, is always available.
What are you implying? Not all partners are friendly?
Well, I've met a few.
I'm shocked here.
Yeah, I know you're shocked. Oh, yeah.
This does not align with my experience
Really?
at all.
Okay, yes. Okay. For those who are watching, all partners of law firms are lovely, cuddly, teddy bear-like people. That is not true.
Never lose temper, never shout.
Never have any strange personal behaviors.
No, not at all.
Yeah, be amazing at handling stress, not egotistical. Gosh, we could have a list of all these saint-like people. So yes, I mean, we've got this system that does that, but it also, and this is also something we're really excited about, it also acts as a software developer because it's also got access to our code base. So if it sees something that it thinks could be improved in the code, it offers improved code in real time. And then our developer can look at it and decide whether or not they like the improvement or they think the improvement can be adjusted in some way. And when you think about it, that is a massive force multiplier for developing a law tech product, because you can have something that acts as a sort of friendly assistant, not only to Garfield, but also to the development team and the lawyers involved, myself and Hugo. So that's one thing we're very excited about. One other thing, this is not quite on the same topic, but I'll tell you too, Charlene. We have something we call the human agent, which is another AI tool. And this is part of our testing of Garfield. This is an AI that pretends it's a human, bringing a claimant, bringing a small debt claim, and will communicate with Garfield and try and put dummy documents on. And it's got various modes. It's got a sort of sophisticated mode where it acts like a sophisticated claimant, all the way across to the chaotic mode where it acts like a litigant in person who's particularly crazy. And that's a good way of testing Garfield. Can Garfield handle when they've got a user who's frankly a bit nuts? The great thing about that is that you can do it in scale. So you could run, 20 claims or 50 claims or 100 claims with the same agent, which would be a lot more testing a lot more quickly than if you tried it with humans. Plus as well, you'd have to find 50 crazy litigants in person who would be willing to test the platform, which is probably more challenging than it looks.
Is Garfield quicker than a law firm that specializes in this type of similar small claim?
Inevitably. I mean, so one thing that's really interesting, and I wasn't expecting, I was always expecting to see Garfield do better in terms of time and therefore better in terms of cost. I think those are inevitable consequences of using AI in the way that we're using it. What I hadn't thought was that Garfield would do better in terms of being human, which is a really surprising consequence.
Tell me more here.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So I won't say who it is because there's a confidentiality clause in place, but a TV company has filmed a documentary and it's coming out in October. And they're doing some clever things, but they have done an experiment with our blessing where they had somebody who he did a sort of test of Garfield against trying to use a solicitor, and he said he found Garfield more friendly and approachable. And I think that's partly because AI is always available. It's not sort of got the drumbeat of a billable clock at the back of its head like lawyers do, where lawyers worry a bit about the cost of everything, and so they try and do things efficiently and quickly, and that might mean that they cut down the rapport with their clients. And whereas Garfield doesn't have to worry about those considerations. And also Garfield tries to answer questions at the level the user's at, and lawyers don't always do that. I mean, I can remember in practice sometimes I would unfortunately give a rather too technical answer when what the client was asking for was something much more simple, and Garfield doesn't sort of fall into that trap. So there is a really interesting question there about whether technology can give a very sort of human experience to a user. And I think you've got to be a bit careful. You don't want to be overhuman. You don't want sort of a user that sort of spends all their time chatting about their day-to-day with a product. You want them just to come on and use it and move forward. But yes, really interesting.
And are there boundaries that are set in case, let's say, the claimant who is perhaps vulnerable or emotional or maybe even traumatized tries to use Garfield as a bit of a psychologist and counselor or best friend, dare I say. And I'm sure we've seen that, right? As practitioner in a law firm, sometimes we have vulnerable claimants who come to us with more emotional demands than perhaps legal questions. And we human lawyers have to set some boundaries around, well, I'm your lawyer, not your counselor or psychologist, right?
Yeah.
How does Garfield do that? And has that ever come up?
We've not seen very much of it, fortunately. I think most people that use Garfield do understand it's just to help them with debt claims. And debt claims are not, fortunately, the most emotional aspect of litigation. I mean, I imagine if you were building something for family or crime, it would be a lot more, there'd be a lot more emotional resonance going on. But we have built boundaries into Garfield. So Garfield is polite, but isn't going to sort of indulge somebody who really wants to go for a sort of mock counselling session, because I don't think that would help them, and it certainly wouldn't help us. So Garfield will say, I really can't help you with that, I'm afraid, and please do get specialist assistance or something. But you are right. I mean, when I was in practice, even though I did commercial, big complex commercial dispute resolution, it was still amazing to me how I would find myself in cases sometimes with clients who they might be sort of older than me and very sophisticated business people, men and women, and they would be, in tears in my office, or they'd be very unhappy about something, particularly partnership disputes and shareholder disputes where it was a family company. And of course, I'm an awkwardly British guy, and I sort of pat them on the shoulder and say, there, and I think, oh my goodness, I need proper counselling training. I don't know what I'm doing here, And I've been saying a lot, actually, that I think part of the future of the profession, the future profession, we really need to think a bit more deeply about what it is to be a lawyer and how we train people to be lawyers. And I would have benefited enormously from counselling and psychology training. And I really hope that, I think universities are thinking about this actively. I know they are, I've spoken to a lot of professors, Mr. Garfield, but I really would like that to be merged into a law course now, as well as a bit more technology, a bit more learning how to program and things. I think that's going to make lawyers in the future much more rounded.
Are we talking about emotional intelligence here, Philip?
Well, we might be, yes. I'm not saying I have any. I'm just saying I think we need more as a... But I mean, we can all think of different types of lawyers. I mean, I think family lawyers, when I meet them, and criminal lawyers tend to be more emotionally intelligent than, no disrespect to anyone listening, tax lawyers. I know some very emotionally intelligent tax lawyers, but I also know an awful lot that are not remotely emotionally intelligent. And I think, so lawyers tend to gravitate into areas, I think, that they feel naturally fit them. And I think in the future, there's going to be less of a place to hide if you don't want to have better emotional intelligence. It's not a bad thing to try and have a bit of EQ, is it?
Well, considering psychology is my current field of practice, I would say.
Yes.
That's what's needed.
Am I preaching to the converted here? Yeah.
I have a very practical question.
Sure. Yeah.
Of course, we all know this sort of debate about electricity and renewables and energy that AI demands and requires. So I have some practical question around, do you have your own data center?
No. We're a relatively small UK startup. And so in order to have an access to justice product, you've got to keep your costs sensibly confined. So we're definitely not a huge business.
Is that something you would think about for the future? Do you think it could grow to scale to the point that you could need your own data center?
That thought has never crossed my head. We keep all our data in the UK for regulatory reasons, so possibly. But actually, the way we've built we built it into a very safe and secure ecosystem, and it's very scalable. So at the moment, no, but I don't know, maybe in the future. But are you really asking about energy and water use? You're probably asking about energy use?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think, fortunately, that's way above my pay grade because I'm not a government minister and I'm not Microsoft or Sam Altman. What I have been watching with great interest is, of course, Microsoft bought 3 Mile Island, a nuclear power station in America, and it's restarting it. And I saw the other day another AI company has bought and shipped into America another nuclear power station that they're building. And I think that it's going to drive all of this a lot more thought about how we do power as a civilization. And this is off topic, but I was also reading the other day, and this is really interesting, that another of the big tech giants is looking very seriously at building a thorium reactor in America. Now, they don't have any in America yet. England, I think we had to test one in the 60s and 70s, but we shut it down. And they're innately much safer than a uranium reactor. I think China and India have got one, and they're testing it too. But that might be actually a good thing for humanity, because if thorium reactors are built in scale and they're safer than uranium reactors and they have less of a problem with the half-life of the byproducts, then that might solve a problem that we have at the moment, which is a need for electricity. And do we really want to build nuclear reactors that, unfortunately, we've had some problems with as a civilization in the past?
Yes, of course. Will you indulge me in controversial question number 2?
Yeah, sure, go for it. Yeah. I can always evade it like a lawyer.
Yes, of course. Sorry, time's up.
Let's give you advance warning. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Well, of course, you attracted a lot of press,
Yes.
as one would when doing something so avant-garde.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading some of the comments, of course, and I see a lot of praise and accolades as you being effectively a pioneer, which you are, being the first SRA-regulated AI law firm in the UK. But of course, there is the threat piece,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially from the point of view of other law firms.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a threat? Are you a pioneer? What are you?
Yes, I didn't start out with any intention of being a threat, and I'm trying not to be a threat. I'm not a threatening person. I'm quite a charming person, I hope. I'll let other people be the judge of that, though. So my view on all of this is that when something is invented, it can't be uninvented. Mm-hmm. So it's AI, nuclear weapons, the steam train, you name it. Pretty much any invention has, when it's been significant and it's changed human civilization, it's changed. And we've had to adapt as a species to it. And AI we've reached a point with these LLMs where they can do these very helpful things. It's inevitable that people will build products with them. And then if it's inevitable that people will build products with them, then you've just got to ask yourself the two words I mentioned earlier, which is how do we build responsibly and how do we ensure for accountability? And so if I hadn't done this, I'm sure lots of other people would have done it. And I imagine other people will be doing it. Even in the last few weeks, we've seen another solicitor, Alex Monaco, who's a lovely bloke. If you've not seen him, you should go and see him as well, Charlene. He's a really interesting guy. He's built a product called Grapple it's different from Garfield because it's an unregulated product. And what it tries to do is help employees who've got employment claims. And so you could, and there's also some other lovely people who you probably met actually at the conference that we met, Amanda and Vicky, who've got Separate Space, which is a really exciting product to help people going through the horror of a divorce. And I think this is just the beginning. There'll be lots of other products built, not just for law firms, but also for people to use directly. Garfield, of course, sits between the two because Garfield is designed to be used by law firms and also not by law firms. So it does both. But you'll just see an ecosystem evolve. And then it's a competitive marketplace. People will evolve to operate in that marketplace, I think.
What is the one thing you would really love everyone to know about Garfield that is currently misunderstood?
So 2 things. First of all, and this is for any lawyers watching, Garfield can be used by law firms. And I don't think that
Tell me more.
Well, because I'm a lawyer's lawyer, and I was in practice 25 years. And when you're that sort of person, you want to help the profession as well as other people. And so I'm very conscious there's plenty of law firms out there that, particularly high street practices, they don't have huge resources. They're not Clifford Chance. They can't spend millions on building their own AI product. So I wanted to build something that they could use, because otherwise they wouldn't have something. So I ensured that when we built Garfield, high street law firms can use it, or any size law firm can use it, but I assume that the primary interest will be from high street law firms, not just to pursue their own debts, but also to operate it to pursue their clients' debts. So that gives them an advantage because then they've got this technological platform that otherwise they couldn't have built, that they can use to scale their own practice and hopefully become a bit more profitable. And profitability for smaller firms is a big deal. That's one thing. So it's not just for non-law firm users, it's also for law firms. And we've got plenty of law firms using it already, actually, at scale, which is really nice. Get a lot of really good feedback from them about extra things they'd like us to add to the platform. What's the second thing about it? So some people have just become obsessed about the fact it just generates letters, but it actually does it does a lot more than that. It generates the claim form, the particulars, it deals with the court process, and it goes all the way up to the edge of the 1 hour trial. So it does everything up to generating a bundle if you have a defender claim and a little skeleton argument. So it's a lot more than just a sort of chatbot.
And is there just one wish that you have for the future? If you could shape Garfield to become any kind of law firm for the next few years, what is your actual vision for the next step, the scaling, the growth?
Oh, yeah. So it's definitely what we were talking about earlier, which is that if we can get to the point where we can build some other products built on Garfield technology for people that are really vulnerable, and at the moment they can't really access legal redress, that would be fantastic. That would really validate all of the work. And my team, they're all, as I said earlier, they're all much younger than me. They're very idealistic, and I think they're very excited by that mission. They really are excited about the fact that they're building something novel and new, and they're seeing it help people, and they can see how other people could be helped. And I think they feel very good about that.
Philip, are you ever going to retire?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm very bad at retiring. I'm the world's worst retiree. Yeah.
According to Japanese culture, that means you will be a centenarian, you know?
Oh God, I'm not sure I want to. There may or may not be an advantage of being so old you can't actually enjoy life, and maybe it's better that you. I mean, there's the whole question of technology there about extending life, isn't there? But no, I mean, I like a lot of lawyers, I like to keep busy. I think we all do. It's part of our nature. And it transpires that my plan of just sitting around and catching up on my reading and repainting the house and having a relaxing time, doing a lot of traveling, is not something that at this present time I appear to be able to achieve. But I hope to at some point in the future.
Can I ask you one last question?
Yeah.
And that ties into the digital well-being piece.
Yes.
Of course, you're working with AI, so countless hours at a screen, even more so perhaps than in the traditional way, which is already very screen heavy.
Yes.
How do you safeguard for yourself, your own well-being and your team's well-being against this digital fatigue, screen exhaustion, eye pain, headaches, and everything that goes with digital usage and overusage?
That's a really interesting question, because I obviously wearing glasses and I have not great eyesight, and I often will get headaches when I was in practice. What I've found, and it's really, really quite interesting to me in Garfield, is that the pace of life is very different in what is essentially a tech business to what was a law firm. So in my previous experience when I was at Baker McKenzie and then when I was at my firm, CYK, being a city lawyer is stressful, it's intense, clients are very demanding, other lawyers are very demanding, the court's very demanding, and so you're under a lot of pressure all the time. And also because of the way that law firms do their finances, i.e. you charge by the 6-minute unit, you're under pressure too, because you always feel that you want to try and get work product done quickly, so you're not causing the client to incur big bills and things. And that's a lot of constant pressure and stress. And I think that manifests itself then, as you say, looking at screens, getting headaches and sometimes feeling quite unwell. Being in the tech business, it's quite different. People are more relaxed, they're cerebral like lawyers, but they're not sort of intense and stressy. We're not under the same pressures from our users because small debt claims are not sort of life or death for most businesses, and it's not like they need something instantly. There's just a series of sort of controlled steps in the process. And programming is actually quite a charming thing to do. And when I was at university, I had a friend there who went into medical products, and obviously they're very mission critical, because if your programming goes wrong and there's a bug, then someone could in theory die. So you can imagine the amount of thought and the amount of testing that goes into those sorts of products. And he would say sometimes he might have a day where he'd written literally only 4 lines of code, and that would be for him a productive day, because he thought and thought and thought all the way through every possible manifestation. And he would say it's also quite a sort of chill day. And it doesn't sound like a lot of productivity to a lawyer, but I get it totally. But it's a very different cadence to life. So I've found actually that the last 2.5 years, I've hardly had any headaches caused by working on Garfield, which has been fantastic, even though I'm looking at a screen just as much.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Also very important for those watching to make sure your prescription's up to date.
Always a good thing.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people don't go to the optician enough, and then they get headaches because their glasses are wrong. Yeah.
That's true. I actually recorded a podcast with an eye doctor who gives a lot of recommendation, and it's fascinating. I've been doing the exercise that he recommends, and it's fascinating how much there is a connection between your eyes and headaches, and how you can alleviate that by simple exercises. So I'm glad that we touched upon that. Philip?
And we're going to move on anyway in technology because at the moment it's all screens and mice and tapping on keyboards. But we've almost got to the point where you can have a real-time conversation with an AI. And then the interface with, I think Garfield will almost just be on your phone, just be your sort of friendly, chatty process for doing a small debt claim.
Is that the next step, a mobile app version of it?
Well, it's on mobile already, and it can talk to you, and you could talk to it, but it's not able to do a real-time conversation. And we don't recommend mobile because you need much more screen real estate. You need to be able to see all the documents. But we'll get to the point where a lot of this is just going to be sitting on a mobile phone, and it's all even more convenient, like your friend in your pocket, that sort of AI.
Love it. Philip, where is the best place you would like people to connect with you to get into your world and get into Garfield's world?
I'm not sure I have a world, really.
Is that a pun intended? Because you created a digital world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My world, I don't know, I'll have to go off and think about how to define that. Well, if you want to find out more about Garfield, then www.garfield.law. And if you want to connect to me, then LinkedIn is sort of probably the easiest place. Apologies in advance if you don't hear very quickly, just because I seem to have become of some interest to people since May, which is still a bit mysterious to me why, because I'm not that interesting a person, but I will try and connect and respond if I can.
Leaving us on a big, bold British understatement. Yeah?
Guilty as charged.
Philip, thank you. I learned so much, and I'm sure our audience is going to enjoy it as much as I have today. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
If you want to be featured on industry's leading podcasts, you know you need to grow your LinkedIn presence and improve your personal brand, but have zero time to do it yourself. Capture B is your answer. I've been using it myself, and it's been just a game changer. So today, I want to share it with you. If you're ready to grow your business and personal brand without burning out in the process, go to captureb.io. Thank you for spending your time with me today and listening to this episode. Remember to subscribe so that you can receive weekly updates. And if today's message resonated with you, please remember to share it with a friend, a colleague, or a loved one who could really benefit from this episode.